Good to tell us. But so we are in good company. And maybe as we start off, I just can't get this fire off my mind. David, you're a parent, you have been in a school where there have been scares just like I have been. I mean, can you imagine what would be going through the mind of a parent?
Actually, Fred, this is a sad thing and a very difficult moment for the parents.
Yeah.
And not only for the parents,
Yes.
but families at large and even to the girls themselves.
Yeah.
It is always a very scary moment when you find, like for example, you had a desk mate and you hear the sad news that the person you used to sit with have gone. It really traumatizes even the people who are left. And for the parents, the tragedy and the challenge is some of them are very far, even in terms of organizing themselves to go to the place, because right now they don't know who is alive, who is dead. It really makes them to have a very bad moment. In terms of the mind, the state of mind, they are disillusioned. It is actually thrown off through the balance. And that's where you have said, and I like the words that you have said, that we can only pray to God that He is going to give them peace at this moment, even as they are preparing to go, even as they are receiving the phone calls, because it can be such a bad moment. I have experienced it in one of the schools,
Yes.
and it was not easy. You are finding that even some of the people, even through the some of the people may not even die because of the fire.
Yeah.
But it is because they are actually running helter-skelter. You don't know exactly where to go. You don't know what to do. Some of the children, they have conditions.
Yeah.
Even the smoke itself.
Inhalation.
That one is able actually to make some of them to get into that state. So we can only pray to God because it is a sad moment. And we would say that all the authorities, like the Nyeri County, they need actually to put all their resources and everything to be able to contain the situations. But we say sorry so much to the parents who have lost their dear ones. It is a sad moment. I don't know even how to explain it, but I only pray for the sorrows of God to be upon the hearts of the parents and the relatives as they go through this, even the teachers themselves.
Yeah.
Actually, it is the
entire community.
The entire community.
Yeah.
So it is actually something that we really need to pray for them and actually to pray that God is going to touch their hearts during these difficult moments.
James, I know when you're in school, there was a lot of burning of schools. I'm not saying that this is that case. But I can imagine the things that people are going through. I mean, we had a season where schools were being burnt. Don't you think it's a high time that every school had a fire hydrant, near the domes, so that in case of this, you just, before the fire engines come, you attach the pipes and you can literally be able to put out the fires.
You see, I've been in a school that probably didn't experience strikes and fires so often, but I have seen the school modernize from, it was a national school, but then with all the glamour and all the hype, there were still some things that were, you would say, out of place for a national school. The dome still had the grills, the wire mesh grills. So you see, in the event of an emergency, it was so hard to escape. But then with the push from the board of management and the parents and the teachers themselves, the school modernized slowly. So they took off the wire meshes and just ensure the windows are access free, that you can jump out in case of any emergency. Say a snake scare or a fire or the incidents of a perceived ghost. So you see, and the new dormitories that were built were made more spacious and the windows were made more spacious and they did not have the gridlocks. So it is possible for schools to modernize, and I'm saying that in cognizance of the fact that fires could and other emergencies could not be fully anticipated. You could still have the fire hydrants, but then something else different comes on. But maybe it's high time that these schools have the hydrants, as you were saying, and maybe more fire extinguishers. You would be shocked that even big businesses in this city do not have fire extinguishers. They do not even understand what a fire permit is. Say if they do not understand about fire permits and the licensing for such, how do they even have a fire extinguisher in the first place? So yes, a lot needs to be done in our schools, but it is we cannot fully combat it.
Yeah.
But we can try. It's a mitigation effort, and I think we should make more efforts towards it. And this now goes to the board of management of those schools, all schools in the entire country. They already know that fires are so prevalent in high schools, and now in this case in a primary school. So they should start setting aside funds to mitigate such emergencies.
And drills.
Yeah.
Because drills create what you call muscle memory. You know, if a fire, starts here, how do we get out of this place so that you avoid the panic? Panic kills so many people. George, I don't know whether you went to a school where you guys set the school on fire.
It's slightly over 23 years now since I left high school. But we had a very tragic incident in 2002. And I think, first of all, I want to pass my very sincere condolences to the parents of the students who've lost their lives. It's always a tragic news for you to lose a loved one. It doesn't matter whether it's a child or a brother, a sister, or a partner.
And in this case, the mom.
And in such tragic circumstances that maybe you didn't expect, if maybe you had a sick patient, you could begin to anticipate. And so my very sincere condolences to them, and I think it continues to be a lesson to our institutions in as far as high schools and school institutions are concerned. Fred, I went to boarding school in class 4, and all through in class 4. And since class 4 up until today, and I was just joking with a friend of mine, Fred, I have never spent a month continuously with my parents since class 4. Because then we used to call, you'd close, say, for 3 weeks. It's April, you close on 6th, 7th, and then you only have 3 weeks and you're back to school. So from class 4, and then a primary school, high school, college, university, up until today, because after university I moved to my own house. So I've never really sat a month. The last time I did that was probably 94. You understand? So I understand what it means by living in institutions where you're living with others, and institutions which are susceptible to such attacks. And in our school, actually, we ended up having a full-blown disaster management unit, David, because we had an outbreak not of fire. There was a water pollution within the school. And then so the whole place was contaminated, and we ended up losing around 20 students. A friend of mine, one of the classmates, just left classroom and collapsed on the road. And by the time they took him to the hospital, he was dead. And that began a streak of others who were then now rushed into hospitals. And then we lost a bunch of others through treatment, and they ended up turning, I think, 18, 19, because I've lost track of the number. It became a national tragedy because at the time C.S. Charity Ngilu was the Minister for Health. James Nyekal was the Director of Medical Services at that time, and they camped in our school because President Kibaki had told them to because losing 10, even 3 students is not something you can pray for. And you can imagine for young kids who had never seen a dead body, that was the first time for us to, actually for me, that was the first time to see somebody that I sat with that is dead tomorrow, and it can be traumatic for any student. So even as we say our wishes, our various condolences to the students, I think it's a lesson to the institutions. And it's not just fire, Fred. I think we need to have a full-blown policy for institutions, academic institutions, and other institutions that really involve coalescing a number of people, the military camps and the NYS and these other government institutions, so that they can make it a habit to have full-blown disaster management units, so that we do not have to get to 16 or 14, 16 students like that, that some of these issues are mitigated very fast. One of the things I think we did even for us at that particular time is what James mentioned. Even us, our dormitories had the wire mesh, and they had now to remove them, because then it means what happens if fire kicks off from the exit, then the rest of the students can't even leave. So one of the precautions that was done, and considering our school was it was a high-rise school, so some of the dormitories were 2-3 floors. So you could imagine we had some students.
Jumping from,
We actually had an incident where one time a student even jumped from the window from the first floor, because our dormitory was 3 floors, and you know, he injured himself, and it was not a real scam. It was just somebody said moto, and you know, from the ground floor, and in his thinking he said that's the last place I want to exit from, and he ended up jumping, but kumbe it was not real fire, it was just a small issue there. So my prayer is that government, particularly the Ministry of Education in this particular case, we can pick a lesson from what has happened in Nyeri, and then institutionalize the policy.
Haven't we been learning these lessons for too long?
We never learned that.
I think we've been learning, we've been through this for a very long time. I think there's Moi. I remember
Kianguli. Remember the story of the
I think it started with Changuli.
Yeah.
And then we also had Moi Girls.
Yeah, I think so.
Where we lost quite a number of students through a fire, where, you know, it said one of the students had started the fire.
There are so many, Kakamega.
Yes,
very
quite
true.
a number.
So these lessons, how many lessons, how many experiences do you have to go through to literally learn a lesson? And we still don't know the circumstances under which. But I will not be surprised if we discover it's more or less the same thing. We've been here before.
You know, Fred.
How long? How surely?
You know, Fred, I think last week we talked about the mileage and in terms of the culture, the way you operate and you do things. I think we are in such a society whereby as long as it has not hit me, I don't feel it as if it is something of urgency to do some few changes.
Yes.
Some of these things, they happen, I can tell you, some of the people will actually look. You see the way you are concerned about what has happened.
Yeah.
There are some people, literally, they are not concerned. They'll only say there was fire in a school. And from there, they will not even care what happens because they are continuing with their lives as usual. It is actually whereby people do not have a concern for the other people. And I think the government is actually sleeping in some of these things. Because as you have said, there are so many drills you can do. There are so many things that in terms of even the people who goes and check. Because in schools, there is actually a policy in terms of health and safety. Even in terms of the numbers, they tell you for this kind of a school, these are the only students who can fit in this school. Even in a class, there are all those things. But the question that we keep on asking, when you find, when you go to some schools, you find that like in a dormitory, you are finding that there are deckers and deckers and many people, even some of the students.
Very closely placed.
Yeah. You go and even you find some of the people are sleeping on the corridor. Why? There are no facilities in school, but we still want to make sure that to meet more. So when they are doing all these kind of things, do they even think about the dangers that is there? They don't. What they are looking at is that we want like everybody to go to school. But instead of the government actually coming and assessing and saying, we want everybody to go to school, but how safe are our children? How safe is the community which is there? But because it has not hit them, and that's why one of the things, even in terms of health, you find that most of the people, actually even in terms of our politicians, sometimes they don't care what happens in our public hospitals. Why? It is because you look at their outpatient, they have 10 million. No, they have like 200,000. They have 10 million covered.
Yes. They have the insurance policy.
Yes, the insurance policy.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, their life is okay. So some of these things that you are feeling them, they don't even feel them. Because when someone, like for example, your family, you have really to take a cover for your children.
Yes.
But for them, it is actually for 4 children or something like that.
Yes.
So you find that most of these people, they are actually in a comfort zone. And that's why you find in terms of implementing the policies, they don't feel the urge. Because there are some few things, like we are saying, when you are actually developing a school and you put grills, and you make it at now, you are protecting the people from outside to come.
Yeah.
But are you actually protecting the people who are inside?
Yeah.
In case of anything happens, where do these people go? So there are some few things you look at them surely and you say it is a bad culture. It is people who don't want to put the cap. You know, the thinking cap.
We don't want to change our mind and learn new things.
Sure.
Because every society is supposed to evolve.
Correct.
But we seems to be growing old without evolving.
I think that's a problem with. I would not want to put it barely on the African continent, but then it looks so that we hate. We pretend we do not want to copy what's progressive, but we've copied bad manners. I don't know where we've copied, for example, corruption from, because most of these countries we borrow stuff from have already moved past that. It was a culture to them, and they came to a point and realized that this is retrogressive, and they moved past that. It has been hard for African countries to move past certain cultures. And it is not a problem in the education sector only. It's a problem in the entire country. In almost every sector, most ministries in government do not even have disaster management projects and committees. And if they are for sure. They have money allocated.
Literally do nothing.
They have money allocated to them, but they do not use such monies. And they cannot explain to you and account to you where that money goes. We have, say for example, the flood issue that was in Kenya a few months ago, and county governments were supposed to have money in the disaster management committees and in their kitties to take care of flood victims. How much money did they have? Most of the counties could not show you where that money is, yet they set aside that money, and it is in the constitution, I think, that they should set aside monies for emergencies, whether drought, whether floods, or any other emergency. But they had to seek support from the national government. Some of the counties did not literally have anything. And it is such a scare, because if that is the culture, then that transcends all through to the education sector and to the other sectors in this country, that we have disaster management committees and programs that do not work. They are barely there to be seen. Same way we have a ceremonial government. So it is that bad. I wish we get to that point as a continent. We feel we need to be more progressive.
It is a continent problem.
Yeah, it is a continental thing.
And Africa, is it? When you say it's an African problem, a continental issue, but mostly experienced, I think, within African Inyuthi. Is it that our culturing? Because almost all countries, had a colonial background. Yeah. Is it the culturing from the colonial? Is it the culturing from our? Where did we get these bad manners?
You know, Fred, when a child is born with a clean heart and good manners. All these manners we acquire as we grow. And I think James is right. It's something that we learn from somewhere, but we don't know where. Because obviously Kenya is still a young nation, 60 years. We have other nations that have been there for hundreds of years. America from 1776, they're almost doing 240 years. And maybe at the time when they were also becoming a nation, and they were, the first 30 states that formed the Union, and then eventually the other states that came in to become the United States, probably they had many of those challenges, including the other things that we're struggling with of representation and democracy. And so Kenya, as a growing country, then we are slowly, heading towards that direction. I think what really gave a turning point to those developed nations is when the people began to hold their leaders into account.
The people
began, yes, when the people began to hold those leaders to account. And we have that famous story of the French Revolution, where an overzealous queen of a state comes up and makes a ridiculous statement because the public, exactly, the public is crying out and say we are hungry, and then you completely insensitive, you say, how about you have this? She was completely insensitive sensitive, and the consequences were real. And I think he cost even her husband power. You understand? And so those countries got there because the people then decided to begin to teach their leaders a lesson, and that's why you saw even in this Gen Z, during that Gen Z movement, the leaders who could no longer have flags in their cars because then they knew this opulence.
You're
this
throwing a rock to
it's
yourself.
because that's just an example of what can really get our country accountable. Because I can no longer steal money and walk. You know that famous video of Murkomen with a bag of money in the bag. Around that time, I think they were in a function, but the money was a lot, so it was in the bag. So he was telling the people to guess how much is in the bag for the contribution. And then they were counting 1 million. 2 million, and it's in the bag, you know, and it's such kind of opulence. You have to begin to question the leader, David, and say, this money that you're sharing us, where is it from? Your salary. And people feared. That first, David, you remember, leaders didn't want to appear to be opulent, really, because there are those who had been marked that this money that you're spending, the watches, the shoes, the coats, this is our money. And, at that point, people became a bit accountable. If that can be escalated into all the levels of government, Fred, then the politics of money might come to an end, or at the very least, that brazen show of state funds for somebody who doesn't even own a factory. How can you be a billionaire without even a single?
You don't sell anything.
You're not even
service
exactly. Exactly. I mean,
you don't even have a kiosk.
Not a single. You can't show how do you become a billionaire, Fred? It's not realistic when you become a billionaire without owning a factory.
Quite a number of them.
A lot, but we are hitting there, Fred, because then we're beginning to have young and extremely informed leaders, and this is where I've been saying, and I was on different shows and I was telling some people that if we can go big on civic education, David, and get young people, and particularly we youngers that are fairly open-minded and can listen to new ideas, and begin to see the importance of participating in this public process. Sometimes I call it the opportunity cost of not participating in elections, because 8 million people didn't vote, and maybe they costed us a better leadership in the last 2022 election, isn't it? Yeah, so we begin to teach people to understand why they should turn up and also take their opinion, because Kenya is a free democracy, Fred.
You see,
I have something to say, and what Senior Ngaira is saying is we have rich politicians and a poor government. How they have
the government is poor, but we have rich politicians.
Yes, how they have money and the government doesn't still, I think, jumps my mind. Then on this issue, before we move on from this issue, I think even though it seems unfair, I would want to put all the blame on the Ministry of Education. I mean, it is their duty to ensure that schools are up to standard. It is not merely about the curriculum, about teachers, about, for example, pay and the welfare of the staff. The onus is on them to also check on the quality of schools and the disaster management programs that the schools have, and it is also their duty to look at the quality of environment a school has. There are schools in this country that do not have proper classrooms, and you cannot blame that on the parents. There are schools in this country that do not have toilets.
That's a disaster.
Yeah, and it is on them, the Ministry of Education. And there are schools in this country that do not have a disaster response. They have never seen a fire extinguisher. They don't know how one looks like. So if you've not prepared for disaster, then you're prepared to fail. If a disaster comes, then you're prepared to pay the cost for that emergency, be it floods, be it a fire, or any other scare. So they have a role. And if they have failed at that role, they should tell us, so that we can think of another solution. Maybe we should disband the Ministry of Education, because they seem to be so active on the KCSE and KCPE stuff. To them, it's all about exams and assessments. How about the other part they forget? Before there was a gun issue prevalent in schools in the States, there were systems in place to control that. And you saw how quickly that died. Come to this country. If God forbid we have a gun scare in this country and we have kids toting guns to school. How are we going to handle that? We've never thought about that. We've never planned for that. That is what the problem is. And I'm saying this is an African problem because we don't plan. We fail because we don't plan, and we don't like planning. I think we don't want things that eat up our brains.
You know, just before you come in, David,
Yes.
I was reading a story of Dangote, the African billionaire.
Yes, yes.
It is shocking. Dangote does one of the biggest refinery in actually it could be one of the biggest in the world.
Yeah. It is.
Nigeria suffers because what it does, it exports its crude oil and then imports refined oil products and oil. Then within Nigeria, the biggest oil refinery is done by one of their own. Now Dangote is having a problem because Nigeria does not want to use his refinery to refine the oil. They still want to export it and then import it. It's just ridiculous.
Let me tell you, Fred.
It's just madness.
Let me tell you, Fred. And even before I come to Dangote, I will actually tell you something, because there is a problem. And you asked a question about where did we go wrong in terms of our culture. It is actually the definition of what success is.
The definition of success.
Success. Many people, they don't care what they do, whatever they do, they think that success is getting a lot of money. So it doesn't even matter. I can actually have a gun and I kill James because he has something which can benefit me. It is actually a bad mindset, and it has come because we are defining success in terms of how much money can I be able to acquire for myself. And that's why you are finding some of these guys, like I was looking at a shoe yesterday, and I don't want to say the shoe for who.
Yes.
But it is one shoe which is costing 1.5 million.
A shoe.
Yeah, one shoe. It is not even the sneakers. You know, looking at them, you just think it is a sneakers. And it is costing 1.5 million.
Yes.
And you know why it is costing all that? And you see, that is how we define success. It is exactly what is it that I am able to do that Fred cannot be able to do.
Yes.
So if I am able to put on a shoe which is 1.5 million, and you are only able to put a shoe which is less than 2,000.
Hata tulienda kwa ile niare.
Yes, correct. Yes. Now that person thinks that I am successful. And it is because, like, if he is hit by a stone, you know what happens to the shoe? The airbag protect the whole body.
The shoe deploys an airbag.
That is the thing. So the thing is, they are looking at the success from that point of view.
Yes.
And that's why you are finding that many times they are not concentrating on the policies in terms of implementation. Because you are actually hearing, this one has this one has a LPAD, this one has this. All those kind of things is what they are looking for. And it is such a serious thing. Now, getting to what you are talking about, it is because politics, like the way James is talking about, in Africa, and even going beyond, it is actually about politics. It is a politics of competition. It is whereby you are saying, why should I benefit Fred? And you know, because of having that kind of a heart, you are not seeing what you are taking country into. Because, for example, we are actually the biggest producer of coffee and tea. Do you want to tell me that Kenya cannot be able to process its tea and coffee? It is because many people are not ready for that. There is actually cartels. They will come to the farmer, they buy the tea, they buy the coffee at a very low price. Then there are the people who are going to export it. When they are exporting, they will export at several times the price
they bought from the farmer.
And when they are coming, they are still the people actually who are in the whole importing. So you find that you will keep on asking, why are we wasting resources in this country? It is not that we cannot do it, but that money is going into the pocket of you. And that's why we are saying, rich politicians,
Poor country.
poor government, poor
Yes.
Kenya.
Yes.
And that is exactly what we are saying. But people are actually having a problem in defining. Because let me tell you, there is no need of me to be successful when I have actually trodden on every other person. There is no need for me to have a lot of money when I have brought down your empire. Because you see, all of us, we need to get to know that everybody needs to take part in sharing this cake. But there are so many people in the African, they are so greedy, such that they don't see anybody else. What they see is themselves. Dangote has a very good, many things. In fact, even in terms of cement and many other things.
Yes.
But look at it. When you are actually going, this is someone who has invested, which can help the country.
Yes.
But you find, because of this greed, because they know if I go through Dangote, there is nothing that will come to my pocket.
That's so immoral.
But that is the culture, that is the need, because we are defining success in a bad way. Until we get to a point whereby we start defining success, that success is when all of us are moving together and we are able to uplift the standards of our country or our state, wherever we are. That is the only time you will find that this culture starts coming out, because you'll be finding what is good for the country is what I will do. What is not good for the country, I will not go and do it.
And you know, you mentioned that, and it reminds me, yesterday I was listening to the deputy president, and I must say, yesterday, when I listened to him yesterday, he spoke a lot of sense. He was at the Kenya Tea Development Authority. And the directors of KTDA, within the short period from January to June to July, they had spent close to 48 million shillings on travels. And then KTDA has subsidiaries doing real estate. Now, it's just, he was telling them, what are you doing in real estate? And it's not profitable for them either. So they are causing the farmer, the poor farmer, to pay for their expenses, the 48 million. They are causing the farmer to pay for the losses for these real estate subsidiaries that are loss-making.
And outsourced legal departments which are losing cases every other time.
And they have an internal legal department with lawyers who are qualified.
You see, on that issue of lawyers and the law scam, I should call it.
Yes.
I have seen that on headlines so many times, and it's something I've been thinking about for some time, prompted by probably what Governor Sakaja and others have been saying. That we have governments, the county governments and state departments and ministries that have lawyers on a payroll, but they still outsource law services from law firms outside. And it is funny that these law firms owe insurmountable amounts of money to governments, both to the national government, to the county government. Case in point, the IBC owes close to 6 billion to law firms, 11 of them. So that tells you that almost every law firm owes around 100 million. For cases dating back from as to 2013 to 2022, cases related to the presidential petitions. So you would ask yourself, how much money do government spend on law? How expensive is law? I mean, they have lawyers on payroll to advise them on almost everything. They can basically avoid conflicts with the law. They can basically stay in the constitutional framework. They can avoid crimes or irregularities that would push them, that would take them to court, because they have lawyers to advise them on that, and they have lawyers to represent them on the same. But then they still outsource these law services from law firms outside. So it is questionable. Is it that these law firms belong to some of their friends and they are trying to plunder and launder money through these law firms? Because those services seem too expensive. The courts have I've actually asked how, I've actually questioned how these services are too expensive, looking at the capping of the amount of money that should be charged for a certain service, say swearing of affidavits or the commissioning of oaths. It seems one oath could go for close to 100,000 for one civil servant. Say, for example, the swearing in of a deputy governor.
Yes.
But the capping is lower than that. So it seems there is a cabal of people trying to steal money from county governments and from national governments using law services as one avenue of siphoning money from the county government. They are basically budgeting for this corruption. And that is what the problem is. And to come to the problem we have, and I always put it this way, that it is an African thing, that we have a climate conducive for tobacco and cotton. We've killed the tobacco industry, we've killed the cotton industry. I remember, I think Thomas Sankara put a law that in Burkina Faso, every textile industry, every cloth that is supposed to be worn in that country, from the state officials to himself to the rest of the citizens, should be manufactured in Burkina Faso. He empowered the agricultural sector, specifically in the cotton sector, so that they would produce enough cotton to make textiles for that country. He was against the importing of these designer clothes and designer brands from Italy, from France, and from all those countries. He asked them a simple question: what is it that they are doing different in their cotton industry that they can produce clothes for millions of people, but we cannot do the same? Yet we have a climate that supports that. Have you ever seen any leader in Kenya or in Africa pushing for us depending on ourselves in terms of textiles, pushing to revamp our cotton industry, pushing to revamp our tobacco industry? We still import cigarettes. And that's funny. And the last investor,
even toothpicks.
Yeah, the last investor on tobacco was the British American Tobacco, BAT, that have almost winded down in Kenya. So I'm asking myself, can we not produce tobacco in Kenya? Can we not have that? Can we not
it's a question of leadership. Because if Burkina Faso, even right now, and Cote d'Ivoire, all those countries now, there seems to be something happening. When Magufuli, our neighbor just here, was alive, we had started seeing something of the sort.
And the first thing he did the day he was first sworn in as president in Tanzania, they were going to have a national function to celebrate his presidency, I think a week later or something like that. And he just called the Minister of Finance and asked him, how much are we going to spend on that national event? I think they told him around 100 million shillings. And he said, we are not having that event, that 100 million, I'm going into the National Referral Hospital. And they replaced all the beds and all the curtains and all the things. That way, that bed, they have a very, there's a hospital there just like Kenyatta. They have been there because they schooled there briefly. It's called Muimbili. He took the 100 million that was supposed to do the event and went with it to Muimbili. And in another 30 days, the hospital looked like a brand new hospital. It's just choices of leaders, Fred. And I keep telling you this because I'm glad we're talking about the laxity in implementing some of these things that appear to be very easy. On this page here, I can see somebody say, this is Robert Mbui. Robert Mbui is a member of parliament from Mukambani. And he's saying, Ruto has no wish to reduce cost of government. Everything in this administration is just lip service. It means they are aware of how much expensive it is to run government. The president has continuously talked of how we need to tighten our belts. I think that's how he has said it many times.
But it means us, not them.
Exactly. And so it is not that he's not aware. Fred, we are now 14 years into devolution. And I keep telling you that devolution, the way it was written in the Constitution, ought to have changed our lives. You understand, on paper. But unfortunately, the leaders that came in after that were not the ones who are as passionate about that devolution as those who actually fought for it. And this president actually led a no campaign, if you remember, to actually fail this Constitution. You understand? And so we are here because of that then, because if at the top there is no leadership, Fred, if you are a parent and you are rogue, your son could very easily be rogue, and then you all become very easily. You come in at midnight, you also starts to come at 10 because he knows my mzee will come at midnight. You understand? It just starts from the top. If the leadership is not right, then the culture then becomes easily entrenched. Magufuli made it a very serious offense not to be in office before 7.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
Because himself, he was there before 7.
Yes.
He was very accountable leader.
Yes.
Fred, I had a very interesting incident. Maybe I can use a minute to explain this.
Yeah.
I met officials from my home county of Kakamega. They were going for a retreat in Kisumu for one of these State Department meetings.
Yes.
And because one of them is a friend of mine, I just bumped him at the mall in Kisumu and asked him, what are you doing here? We have a function here at Siala Resort. We're doing ABCD, and there's a whole delegation. You can come there, because we have mutual friends that we know each other.
Yes.
So they're telling me they're around. It was a random thing. When I got there, because now I was in Kisumu, and Kisumu and Kakamega is just 20-30 minutes, so I can be there and run into my village very fast. So I went there. I realized there was almost 60-70 county officials from almost 10 departments. I think they were saying they were doing a delivery, the Department of Delivery Unit, they were doing a retreat to sort of review. And when I looked at that, averagely the cost of hosting them there for 3-4 days was going to run to 30 million because 30 million. And I told them, and we started having a discussion because the president had just the PS for mining had just been in Kakamega for the gold factory. They launched. There's an investor there, a purported investor there who has come there that she wants to build a gold factory. Fred, the gold in Kakamega is worth 1 trillion shillings.
The gold
in the gold mines of Kakamega in the 4 constituencies that largely have the gold deposits worth 1 trillion shillings. Criminals have already assembled there and devalued it by half. They've said it's $500 million. You understand the situation they had with Magufuli, with the Acacia Mining Company, because they used to claim that they're exporting soil, iron ore. Then one day Magufuli just showed up at the port, not in the field, at the port, and said, which are the containers that are being taken out for iron ore? They said, it's this one. They said, open them. Then he had already come with the government chemists and the people to measure what was there. And then they realized from the samples they picked from the containers at the port is that the value of gold in the iron ore that was being exported was 14 times the value that is being quoted in the papers. Then he knew these people are calling us. So he just went back to the office and asked them, how many times for how long have you exported? Obviously, he's been a minister and for a long time, so he knows them. And he comes from the north anyway, so he knows where the gold is. And they say that they started operating Tanzania in 1998. So he just counted from 98 to this year and quoted what they owe us. I told them, you owe us around $10 billion or something like that, almost $1 trillion shillings. I said, now you need to tell us you're going to pay us because you are calling us. That gold in Kakamega, Fred.
All right, let's go for a short break so that we can get our lights back.
Every Saturday from 8:30 a.m.
But we should not be afraid to interpret scripture.
Get to know the story behind the Bible. Why was it written? To whom was it written? And what was happening when it was written? Understand, get to know, learn how to properly interpret the scriptures so that you're not deceived.
In the book of Revelation, and we have started to enter into the happenings because these are things that are going to take place hereafter.
Join Pastor Felix Gavoy and his team as they go through the different books of the Bible and give you the theological interpretation of the same.
At the very introduction of the book of Revelation, the book lays clear what is contained in here.
Every Saturday from 8:30 a.m. on The Theology Show, only on EBN, transforming your world.
Welcome back. Sorry for that short technical issue, but we are now back. And Gaire, you were talking about the gold situation in Kakamega.
Absolutely, and I was explaining that...
you were actually telling us about Magufuli.
Yeah, and it's just mine was just to rubber stamp what I said about that. It's all about leadership and how the people can then hold their leaders into account, so that some of these things that appear very obvious to an informed citizen seems like an impossibility. And that's why I was giving an example of Kakamega County, where we do have our other byproduct, which is maize, beans, and milk. What we do, because it's an agricultural county. But if there's a product that you'd call a super sub in terms of the potential to raise revenue for the county, so that we can fund our infrastructure bill that we have there, we are looking for, the Kakamega County has about 2,000 kilometers of road. So to do a simple bitumen of road at 50 million is just 100 billion shillings. So the goal, if it's in trillion, it can guarantee enough resources to make a whole county to be full tarmacked and well lit, which is a turning point for any county government. And I think it's for the leaders have completely failed us. The leaders are very much aware of what they're supposed to do, and they will never change until the people themselves begin to hold these leaders into account. That is when some of these simple and obvious things, like the ones we have in Kakamega, where the county government does not even have a department of mining.
It does not have a department of mining.
Directorate of mining in Kakamega County.
No, you're not serious.
You are a journalist. You can go and find out.
Oh my goodness! And they have
You're a journalist. You can go and find out.
Sure.
You understand? That's what you do.
Oh my word!
There's no directorate of mining, and I've told these people that if I'm to ever be in around this system, the first business I'll do is to go get the miners there off the county government's account, because it's their money, it's taxpayers' money. I want them to go to Dubai because 60,000 can get them returns, so maybe 100,000 can give them a day or two, and take them to the global market for gold to see how much an ounce of gold is being sold at. And then when he comes back and goes back into the hole, he should begin to know the value of what he's expecting for anybody that is masquerading as a gold trader in Kakamega. So civic education, and this is what I've been saying every time, and I think James has been saying, the most dangerous person these politicians can meet in 2027 is an informed mind. Because then it means whatever he says won't make any sense. And at least you have an idea of what it means to choose a leader, because the gold value that we have in our county can fund our infrastructure needs. The airport, we need to do a national stadium, a national airport. Our railway lines, we have two major, you remember back then railway used to come to Butere, which is actually the Mushuareli, like in Laikipia, the way you call Mushuareli. It actually terminates in our county, which is in Butere, which can be a massive transit point in terms of transport and logistics. All that can be funded by gold alone, you understand? But the governor over there does not even know the price of gold of the day. You know, every day gold is traded globally.
Yes.
Somebody can check online and tell you in the gold market today, this is what we are selling. And an ounce is going for over $200, $300. That is how much? Like 60,000 shillings.
Yeah, sure.
So you pay me 3,000 shillings and you go sell my gold at 30,000 shillings. It's not fair.
I'm touched by Senior Ngaira, but what is more disheartening is now that we have a flower boy in the Ministry of Mining, I think I am more displeased, because I understand nothing is going to change.
In Joho.
Yeah, he's another flower boy, we all know him.
Nothing will change actually for Kenya. Nothing will change. And I can tell you it will change on their levels.
Yes.
You see, Polo Kimani, by the way, some of these politicians have mining companies. I am friends with some of them and I know how they make money. And they make money with our ignorance. Now that you don't know, your naivety is my strength. So that when you think that in this national park we are protecting animals, we are actually protecting mineral reserves. I have a friend of mine, well, just an acquaintance I should say. His name is Polo Kimani. He has a good media platform. He's good on X. He has a big platform on TikTok, and he's made it his business with some other friends to expose how much we have in terms of minerals in this country. And it would shock you that most Kenyans don't know that we have niobium and the value of niobium in Mlima Hills. And they don't even know where Mlima Hills is. They think that is Tanzania. And it will shock you that we have minerals in Shimba Hills, and most people don't know. And some people don't know that Kitui has limestone, where I come from. And Kitui has coal. Well, I understand the whole geopolitics around coal and its pollutive effects. I understand. But we are rich in minerals as a country. But we were made to think, we were cultured to think that we as a country can only survive with agriculture, that we can only make money through taxation. And that is what our government and our leaders have been pushing. They think that taxation is the only way to make money. Have they, for an instance, sat down and asked themselves, why are we so corrupt? Why do we want to steal? It is in them. They think of new ways and devise new ways on how to steal. Because to be honest, They know how much value is in our mineral industry. They know the mineral reserves we have. They know all the minerals we have in this country. It wouldn't be so hard for them to give us a mineral audit.
Yes.
Tell us how many minerals we have and what is their actual value. Do not underquote it. But they do not have that that willingness.
It is not to their
problem.
It's not to their interest to do that.
Yeah, because they are vested interest in
No wonder we have so many conservancies in this country.
They are protecting mineral deposits and mineral reserves.
And they harvest them.
Yeah. And they harvest them because there was, when Paulo Kimani started doing this story, it brought about, you see, there are people who live in those places.
Yes.
There are people who live in Baringo. And it seems the Baringo war is manufactured. That the cattle rustling is just a facade. It's a face. But deep down, it is politicians funding this cattle rustling business because they want the people to keep on fighting. As you fight, I steal. I've said this before. But as you are concerned, as you are say your mind is lost in fighting, I can steal from you, and when you will realize I've stolen from you, it will be too late.
Yes.
So they fund cattle rustling in this county so that they can steal. They bring up reserves and conservancies. They are continuing a culture that was set up by the white people. The white people were not benevolent in setting up conservancies and national parks in Kenya. Most of these national parks sit on mineral reserves. It is fishy. If you ask yourself, why do we have almost every mineral reserve in a national park but not in other places? They knew, they had already mapped out, and they knew where the minerals were. And they knew when they designate this as a national park. And you see, in a national park, you cannot go to all areas. You are given tour guides that take you to where they want you to go. So the rest of the other landmass,
You have no idea what they are doing
is
in there.
persona non grata. Even when they find you there, the KWS have all the authority to take action against you.
Yes.
So they are protecting the national parks as the politicians siphon the minerals. There was a chopper that was seen on some of the hills in Baringo, and I think the chopper belongs to someone I would not want to say, but
Yes.
it was seen doing rounds on campaigns. So it will tell you that these people know. They know how much we have, and they do not want to account for it because they are benefiting for it. Say, for example, Uhuru and the Ngamia 1 scandal. I mean, I should call it a scandal by now because I understand the arithmetics behind closing the Changamwe oil refinery. I understand, because the state says it couldn't spend 1 billion to renovate that refinery at Changamwe to a state-of-the-art refinery, yet we were not an oil-producing country. And that was before we discovered we have oil in Turkana. Have we been prospecting for more oil? Because if we have oil in Turkana, that tells you Garissa could have oil as well. I mean, and the oil in Turkana, the reason why I'm pointing out the oil in Turkana is because I do not understand the mathematics that Uhuru and that company agreed on, and the benefit that is supposed to come to us as a country that is now producing oil, say maybe in a low quantity, but then what is the benefit that has come to us in the years that Ngamia 1 oil has been mined in this country?
Because even if you look at the revenue in a budget, it's not featured.
Yeah.
Your closing comments.
Let me just close by one common verse in the Bible, which is known by everybody. In fact, if you ask everyone to recite a verse, that is the verse that they will go to John 3:16.
Yes.
For God so loved the world that he gave
Son.
his only son. He is giving the very best. Why? Because of love. What I want to say is that Kenyans, we need to love one another. When we love one another, there are some things we will not do just simply because of ourselves, but we will do them because we want to make the life of everyone to be a good life. So this is what is lacking. We have become so selfish that we only want to see our way winning, but we don't care about the other person.
Sure.
Can we go back to John 3:16 so that we can give what is the best for everybody to have a better and a decent life?
I don't want to add to that. John 3:16, the key to Africa's development. With that, we bring the curtains down on the show. And by the way, continue praying for the families of, the 16 and 14, I understand, are in critical condition. Basically, that entire community, continue praying for them so God can give them grace. With that, we bring down the curtains on the show. To have yourself a lovely day.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.